Alright guys, welcome back to another Talk Tactic video. Today we're doing something a little bit different than we usually do. It's a response video to Homestead Hippie. She put out a video recently talking about how she's a little bit disillusioned with her marriage, and she's comparing her husband to some guys that she dated in her, I want to say, kind of recent past. And she's also talking about this kind of weird spiritual element called the Jezebel spirit.
There's two reasons why we're doing this video. The first reason is because we want to address these points that she's making in this video. And the second reason is for our demographic. A lot of guys, I think, will find themselves in a situation that is similar to this, and we want to bring up these points. So if you do happen to be in a situation like this, you can observe these points and learn something about your life.
I think one of the important takeaways from this is being able to see a relationship that I think a lot of guys end up falling into, especially if you see yourself as the nice guy and you don't ever take the measures to take your life by the reins and navigate into becoming a good man and controlling your destiny.
Also, we're going to be looking at some of the points in Rollo Tomassi's book, The Rational Male, and we're using that as a context also to look at her video.
Right, and I think the interesting part is we're going to be using it in a kind of a weird way where we're kind of using it to help her out if she ever watches this video, to maybe have a tool for her to give her explanations for possible motivations that she may not even realize that she has. I do want to just say a few things before we start. She seems like a very nice person. Like the little bits that I have seen, she seems like she's trying to give a good, honest, heartfelt something, right? She's trying to like lay it out there for you. It feels like.
She's definitely laying it out there.
Yeah. So.
And with that, we'll get into the video.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I think she's cool looking, and I think she seems like a nice lady.
All right,
All right.
let's go into this.
All right.
Okay.
So read to us what you found. What are the different points you found with this video, and some suggestions that you have for her, man?
All right, so the first point in this response is, and this is, I wrote this as two parts. One, the first part addressing her, and the second part addressing our demographic. Okay, so the first part is addressing her. You have a strong primal sexual desire for the bad boy and admit that you tried over and over to pursue these types of men. You pursued these men when you were in your sexual prime, and now that you are not in your sexual prime, it is very difficult to come to terms with the idea that this is the man you are stuck with. A man who you say is depressing you because he's not satisfying you sexually. All right, so this is the first thing that I wanted to put out there. And she starts the video off talking about how she's had these last few nights and she's having a hard time starting out in a marriage with this man, and he's not satisfying her. And then at the end of the video, she's talking about how it's depressing because he's not satisfying. Well, the way she says it is that he doesn't have the same lust for her that her past lovers do, and it makes her feel unloved. It makes her feel like there's something lacking there in that relationship.
Right.
Whereas the past lovers that she's had were very exciting and they pursued her heavily. And the first man that she talks about pursuing her, she says, he was the first person who pursued me in that way, and so I just sort of fell into that. So that's one thing, is the strong desire that she has for this bad boy or alpha man type of personality.
Right. And so like there's not always a dichotomy when it comes to men or masculinity, like alpha, beta, but I think a lot of times it's easy to generalize like this because it's a tool in which you can show a strong contrast. And I think in her individual case here, when you listen to this first segment of her talking, and she's talking about how she kept going after the same type of guy over and over again. I mean, guys that drink and cuss and swear and unpredictable. I think very much that's probably the bad boy type, or what that you would hear about in books like maybe Rollo Tomassi's Rational Male. Not necessarily the bad boy, but the alpha male type, right? And I think
Right,
that is attractive. I mean, that's not just a. I mean, it's not just attractive to her. I think in general, it's been proven over and over again that there's something about these characteristics where that's just attractive to women.
right. And also something that fits into the first part of this video, or the first and second part of the video, is she talks about how she prayed for a boyfriend. And then about that time, this man started heavily pursuing her. And she also talks about how a baby dies. Her sister's baby died. And so her faith was shaken. And she feels like that was a big reason why she ended up going out with this guy and then getting dumped by him and then continuing that cycle on with different guys.
Okay.
She feels like that was a big reason, a baby dying. That she was praying for this baby, the baby didn't live, and then her faith was shaken, and she felt like that was a big reason why she fell into that. So I have a problem with this idea. It's a very common thing, I believe, that people will try to use to not that specific thing, but rationalizing things, using something to rationalize what it is that they want to do. And I have a saying. I have a saying that goes like, "People are going to do what they're going to do."
Agreed.
So if I'm going to do what I'm going to do, then I could present any reason or any excuse, any rationalization of why I am doing what I'm going to do. But that could just be the reason or the rationalization that I'm putting forward to present my image to people. So I don't really, or not just me, but anybody who's rationalizing like this, they don't do themselves any favors by doing that, by not understanding the real reason why they would take an action. They do not do themselves any favor by believing a false reason why they did something, or pushing a false reason on other people to believe about why they did something.
Homestead Hippie. So what Jonathan's basically saying, he's saying two important things here. From your specific examples, he's saying one, if you believe that this guy came into your life because you prayed to God for a guy and you wouldn't have gone out with this guy, but since you're telling us that you prayed for the guy, praying for a man to be in your life, and then a man came into your life, so that's the only reason why you took this man in the first place, because God put him there. And then if you're also saying that I was in a morally bad place because my sister's child just died, and because the child wasn't saved and your faith was lost because of that, and you're using that also as a reason to do things that you wouldn't want to do or you didn't want to do, or you're saying that are bad to do, then, or is the only reason why you did it at that time, then those justifying like that is a bad thing, because what happens is your true motivations or the true things that motivated you to do the thing is disconnected from your reasons or justifications for doing it. And what happens then is that any real substantial change that you want for yourself is impossible because there's a disconnect between the true motivation, the true want, or the true reason versus the justification.
And there's no way that this issue could ever be dealt with if you hang on to the idea, if you do have a false rationalization and the real reason is never acknowledged by you or other people, then it's impossible for that issue to be dealt with.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
Yeah.
So the other thing about this whole scenario is that if you pray for a boyfriend and then this strong masculine alpha male type comes into your life and then you say, oh, God's answered my prayers, he sent me a boyfriend, and then later you're praying for a baby to live and the baby dies and you say, oh, God didn't answer my prayers, so I have to go out with the bad boy, the boyfriend that God sent me. That doesn't make sense to me. So you see, you can see how when you break this down logically, it doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense. It looks like a rationalization to me. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you're doing, then that's what it seems like. You're rationalizing the reason. You're displacing your responsibility of your decision onto someone else, God, or an event, some other event out of your control, which was, pretty tragic. All right, so if you feel like, yeah, I was young and my faith wasn't so strong back then, or I feel like you're saying that your faith is part of your moral compass. So I was young, my moral compass was weak, and now this tragic event happened and it further eroded away my moral compass. And then I had this guy come into my life who was not a Christian, who you felt like you probably, well, it's to what it sounds like you've laid this foundation, so you can say, I wouldn't have chosen this guy. This is not the guy that I would have wanted for myself, but the stage was set, right?
Right.
The stage was set for this guy to be at the right place at the right time. And then somehow by your interaction with him, that just furthered this descent into hell. Like, have you ever when people talk about like Dante's Inferno, he descends down into hell with all the other sinners and stuff like that. So you kind of describe this descent into a debaucherous sort of lifestyle where you continue down this path of you start doing drugs and you start swearing and stuff like that. Now, so this is what I try to tell our audience here, all our tacticians out there, is that you have to decide what you want to do in your life. You have to make choices, right? That's one of the fundamental tools that you have in guiding your life in the direction that you want to take your life in. And you have to make choices. And if your motivation and your justifications are not aligned, then you can't really be sure why you make that choice in the first place. You have to live a life that you're proud of. So part of what we do here at Talk Tactic is we help you gain the tools and some of the information that you need. That way you can choose a direction or make choices that are in alignment with the direction you want to move your life into. And that way you can live a life that you're proud of. You don't have to make justifications for why you do it, because you do it because that's what you want to do. Why did you do that? Because I wanted to do that.
Right.
There doesn't need to be any justification, right? You just have to make sure that you know who you are, you know thyself, so you can choose a life that you can be proud of. And that's important. That's important. And I want to say something too. She seems like a very nice lady.
She does seem like a nice lady.
Yeah, I mean, she seems like a very nice lady. I think She's trying to be her best to be a mom, and hopefully we can give her some insights to maybe the hidden motivations, according to Rollo Tomassi, why she feels the way she feels. We also have a book by Luann Brizendine, who's a medical doctor. She wrote the book The Female Brain. It would also probably give a lot of insight to this kind of
Right.
discussion. So,
Okay, the next point that we have here is you claim he doesn't desire you in the ways you've been with other men. You should not assume that. Let him be free with you sexually. Don't try and control his sexuality and what he does or doesn't want. He married you, and I'm assuming he knows your sexual past. So there's a very strong chance he would like very much to have hot, mutually pleasing sex. All right, she talks in this video about how all these alpha types that she's been with have lusted after her. They have strongly desired her. And now she's with a man who doesn't do all that, and she feels depressed.
okay,
And
that's
she
sad.
feels unloved. And she's saying that he's a righteous man. And then she goes into all these details about what's righteous or restrictions on sexuality based on righteousness.
I just finished watching this segment where she goes into talking about how she's having this, sexual problem with her husband, who she feels is a great man, a good man, a righteous man who's been placed in her life because of God. And she's having this real struggle because she feels like, you know what? He is not. He is not satisfying me. She doesn't use the word satisfied, but
She doesn't say it that way.
but she's contrasting her past lovers with her current husband, right? And then she says this thing that is that he doesn't allow Satan in the bedroom, or she doesn't want Satan to be in the bedroom.
They both. She says they
Okay,
both.
so this is a very, I don't know, this sounds like a dangerous idea to introduce here, but maybe it's something that they need to talk with the counselor and their pastor.
Well, first of all, she doesn't define or she doesn't clarify anything about why one thing would be letting Satan into the bedroom, or she doesn't go into scriptures or anything else like that.
Right.
And she also doesn't talk about how the man being the head of the household should be leading his wife in the bedroom,
Okay, but wait.
sexually.
Yeah,
she doesn't even
Right.
present that idea at all.
Right. So a couple of things. There's so many things just right here. One, if I believe that all men, right, all men are going to have this kind of struggle if you are in a long-term relationship or if you're married. All right? There's a lot of reasons for that. These past men in her life didn't have to work to take care of her and her child, worry about the mortgage payment, worry about the electric bills, have all these responsibilities to take care of, and then have time to entertain and have fun and to enjoy life.
Right.
There's a physical difference just in why they're even getting why are they together and when they're together. And she's torn. It's real sad to see. She's just torn that she is longing for this other experiences that she used to have with her lovers. And there's a disconnect between her and her husband.
Right. So she's longing for that past experience that she had, and in doing that, she's automatically comparing her present husband to her past lovers. It's every time she thinks back and reminisces about the past, it's automatic. It's impossible for her not to compare her husband with her past lovers.
And I think she introduces this real dangerous element with spirituality. So, and I have nothing against spirituality or religion at all, okay? If whatever you believe, that's great. But I think the way she is introducing that element of spirituality is not beneficial to her relationship with her husband, because what she's doing is she's taking personal motivations and she's attributing what she feel is morally wrong, right? Or moral wrong for some reason, and now saying that's bad or that's satanic or that's of a demonic influence, right?
Right.
Instead of being able to communicate with her husband, or maybe she's too ashamed to bring out these ideas to her husband. Maybe she hasn't, maybe he doesn't know about her past.
It's impossible for her to compare or call up these memories of her past lovers and not compare her husband to these other men.
Yeah.
And that is not helping at all. That
So
is not helping her
what
situation
what
at
does
all.
Rollo Tomassi say about that?
What Rollo Tomassi says about this is it's called dual sexual strategies.
Okay, dual sexual strategies.
Right, that is when the woman is in her prime sexuality, she goes for the alpha male. And then when she gets a little bit older, her need for security becomes important to her because she needs to do something and settle while she can,
If she's smart.
and she will go for the beta male at that point, and he makes a good
Or
provider.
not the beta. That she could get the strongest alpha she can secure, and if she's not able to. So okay, so the way I understand it is Rollo Tomassi describes this time period. It's about a 10-year time period between a girl's age of 18 and like 28. And this is the time frame where she's free, she is able to pick any male that she wants or that she's able to get. Usually she's going to get the genetically superior males, the alpha males, the tall, good looking, ripped up, washboard abs, rich, athletic, the athlete, the world champion, like whatever the girl can get, right? This is her time to explore and to entertain herself with those kinds of men, and to secure one of those men. If a girl doesn't do that by like the age of 28, then there becomes this other period in the girl's life, which is about from 28 to 38, where the girl decides, does she want to have a family or does she want to have a career? What's it gonna be? And some women try to do both and end up failing at one, or maybe they get lucky and they can do both. But a lot of times, a lot of women will end up looking for guys that are no longer the alpha types because they didn't secure them, and get one of these other males that Rollo Tomassi calls a beta male, who are strong providers, emotional providers, who are strong resource providers, but in general, some sort of strong provider to the woman to make sure that she can have security in her life. And the dualistic strategy is, while securing a provider, while at the same time, if that provider isn't this alpha male or genetically superior male or a male that would make beautiful babies, right? Then the dualistic strategy is to be able to retain one of these men while at the same time flirting and going out or cheating with her husband, possibly with one of these other types of men.
She is claiming that he does not desire her in the way that she's been desired in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And when she talks about spirituality and religion, I get the impression that everything she says about religion and spirituality is a restriction on their sexuality.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there that she talks about spirituality or religion that would enhance their sex life or enhance the satisfaction of their relationship.
Right.
So I think this is a big problem for people, for religion in general, is that they have all these so-called restrictions, but then where's the satisfaction in marriage? Where's the satisfying sexuality in marriage? uh, it's like she's saying we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do this, but then there's no alternative direction to go in to reach a satisfying relationship. Even if he doesn't know about her sexual past, and he watches this video,
I mean, he may
he would at the very least want to measure up to
these other
the
guys.
level of satisfaction that these other past lovers have provided for her. At the very least, I think he would want his relationship with his wife to be at least as satisfying as it was for her with all these other men she's been with.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think that's a good,
I hope
true
so.
statement?
I would think so.
And if he doesn't, then why are they together at all?
Well, I mean, I think he would, right? So
yeah, I think he would.
So here's the question. The question is, does she believe that he wants that? And I feel like the answer is no. She doesn't feel that way. And there's a couple of things that I was kind of talking about earlier. So one is the husband, and this is something that any man has to think about when you decide to get into a long-term relationship, is one, your role in the relationship is going to drastically change as you become a provisioner, okay? And you really need to think about it. Nowadays, women are educated to not be provisioned for. So if you have a woman that you are provisioning for, you have to ask yourself, why are you provisioning for her? Why are you doing that? Because in today's modern society, women are raised up and trained and educated to be provisioners by themselves. So that's number one, right? Number two, why are you engaged in provisioning if you don't have a child with this person, right? So if you don't have a child with a girl and you're in a long-term relationship, why are you provisioning for her? That's probably not a good thing. So now a husband very much is going to want to take these roles on, because I think it makes a lot of men feel good to take care of a girl, right?
Right.
So the thing is that here's this girl, this woman, and she has this husband who she's describing as a good guy, a nice guy, a godly man. I'm assuming they're Christians. And she's saying, well, he doesn't want to get in bed with me and satisfy me the way my past lovers have. But the question is, well, it's not a question, it's, does she realize that her husband is in a different place when he gets home than these other guys are, right?
Right.
Because he's worried about her and their daughter or their son or however many children that they have. And that's one thing. Does she even realize that there's a difference there? Two, does she realize that this idea of spirituality, like you said earlier, is kind of this way of saying, it's wrong to do that.
Right.
Right? And that seems kind of unhealthy to me. It seems like maybe they need to talk to someone. Or maybe the husband, it is possible that the husband has this sort of hang-ups. So I have this idea, okay? This idea is that if you believe something is morally wrong sexually, but it'll be okay once you get married to a woman, then I think you have a hang-up about that. And when you do get married to the woman, you're not going to be able to let that hang-up go. And that hang-up is going to do exactly what's happening to this couple here. There's this rift that's between them, and I feel like if you have these hang-ups, they're not going to go away once you marry a girl. So once you get married, if you thought something was wrong only because you're not married, but then when you do get married, if you already have this view of that thing as like somehow evil or wrong or something that's debasing to you to do because your state is different, like I'm married, I'm not married, then I don't think that when you get married, that idea is going to go away. You're going to have a hang up on that when you get married. And that's maybe a possibility here. Maybe the husband and her have gotten married maybe he's had all these, who knows what kind of sexual fantasies he's had, but now that he's married with her, he still feels that it's wrong, or who knows what kind of boringness that they have together. I don't know. I mean, it's really mean to say, because you're just hearing her side of the story, and you don't really know. And I feel like if she were to come out and communicate with her husband, and in an honest way say, like, look, this is where I've been in the past, this is where we are together now, I would like something like this between us. I mean, it would be a bitter pill to swallow for the man, but if he loves her, he married her, he's probably pretty committed to her. He should try to do something to turn it around for them. Now I sound like I'm siding with her, man.
Well, something else I wanted to bring up about this thing before we move on is that she's coming from the perspective of she's being dissatisfied. She is dissatisfied, or she is depressed. And where's the perspective of what is her husband feeling about all this? What is his level of satisfaction? She's the one who's had all these flings and relationships with all these other men, and from what she's presenting, it seems like her husband hasn't done all that. I don't know. I mean, we don't know, but the way she's presenting it, it seems like he hasn't had the same past that she's had. He seems like they've had very different pasts.
Yeah, he's a beta.
So
Dichotomy.
my question is, why does it all have to be about her being dissatisfied? Why can't she ask about if he's satisfied, and what would it look like? What would have to happen for him to be satisfied in this relationship?
I mean, that would be a healthy way to approach it.
Because here's why. Because as long as it's coming from the perspective of her being satisfied, or her being depressed or not depressed, that automatically puts the husband in this competition with all of her past lovers.
Right, I see that.
And if she is asking the question, is he satisfied, then who is she competing with? Assuming that he is who she's presenting him to be. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see that.
By asking the question, is she satisfied, he's automatically competing with all these other lovers. By her asking the question, is he satisfied, assumingly, she's not competing with anybody. Or maybe one person, maybe one girlfriend, maybe two girlfriends. I don't know. I mean, we don't have that exact side of the story, but that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and that probably makes her very uncomfortable if being compared to another woman, and whether or not she satisfies him or not, that would put her in a position to have to look at herself and be like, what do I need to do to change? And so I think you brought up an important point there, which is right now she's in a position of not needing to change, but something outside of her needs to change.
Right.
And that is not a position that you want to
And
be.
that's the position you automatically put yourself when you rationalize by saying, oh, a baby died, so that's why I did it. When you externalize the reason as life happening to you, that's the position you put yourself in. Well, something outside of me needs to change.
And so I want to bring this up for our tacticians out there. This is why it's really important to have a good idea of the type of woman that you want, and what her past is like, maybe, or what her future is going to be like. So like I said, this woman right here, she looks like a nice lady. She looks like she's a loving mother and a loving wife, and whether she stays with her husband or not, it doesn't really matter. I think she's a nice lady, and whatever decision she makes in her life, I hope the best for her. But for our tacticians out there that are men, then this is an important thing. You need to have this vision of what is a valuable woman to you, right? Is it a woman like her? Maybe. But you really need to have this really strong idea of what the woman is bringing to your marriage. If you're going to invest your whole life into someone following you on your journey, or you aligning your journey with someone else's journey, you have to make sure that this person has some minimum standards that you want for them to meet, some minimum criteria. Now, she seems like a nice enough lady, but there's something about the way she is viewing, or she is discussing this her problem with her husband, that is askewed, meaning she isn't as of right now, I'm not hearing her take any responsibility for improving her situation with her husband. There's no solutions coming from her. It seems like all the problems are external, either spiritually or from the husband. And that's like a really bad place to be in. And we want our tacticians to be able to understand that if there's going to be any fundamental change in your life, if you're going to improve your life in any way at all, you have to grab the reins and bring in that the change has to come from you first, because that's the number one thing that you can take control of in your life is your actions, your decisions, your choices. And you have to start from there. And she's in a real bad spot, because as of yet from this video, I haven't heard her take any responsibility. It's all spiritual, or it's all the husband so far.
Right, and there is one thing that ties into this point and the next point. It's a mutual thing,
Okay.
and that is that we want to help people. We want to help guys see through the mascara, see through the makeup, and see the reality. So, in other words, when you're watching her tell this story, you wouldn't need us to tell you these things. You would just automatically know, oh, this is a rationalization. Oh, this is what this means. This is the real reason why. That those two things don't add up. These things contradict.
Right.
So you would see
and
the reality, and you wouldn't be automatically drawn into her perspective because she is a woman and you want to sympathize with her, or she does seem like a nice person. But you would have a realistic view of women, and when you're dealing with them, you would have this understanding based in logic and based in reality, and you would be able to apply that to yourself.
Yeah, you have to have a frame whenever you are introduced into other people's frames, and be careful not to fall into their frames. Um, there's this thing called white knighting, and you'll see, like, I'm sure if you were to go into the comment sections of her video there would probably be all kinds of different men backing her up, saying, yeah, your husband, he probably saying bad things about her husband who they don't know, that they've never met this guy, right? And I think that's kind of sad, right? It's like, why would you want to dogpile on this guy that you don't know? Yeah, I do sympathize for her. Like, I feel bad that she's feeling depressed and feeling unloved. You know, in the book, The Female Brain by Luann Brizendine, one of the concepts, this is a highly researched book, by the way. It's like, probably like 5 pages at the end or more, 10 to 5 pages of just research annotations of different research papers that this woman and her husband used to write this book. Anyways, the book does talk about how a lack of touch reduces the amount of oxytocin that a woman receives in her brain. And that oxytocin is very important for a woman feeling loved or being in love with her husband. Now, if her husband isn't doing a lot of physical touch with his woman, with her, then it is possible that it's not just the lack of sexual interaction, but the lack of intimacy in general could be causing her to have these kind of feelings of depression. And this is an important thing for our tacticians to know, is that when you're changing from the nice guy to the good man, you have to understand what you don't know, which is a lot. And you have to be honest with yourself so you could begin to make the tiny decisions, the tiny choices, be bold in making those decisions, right? So you can focus your time and effort to have the work ethic to improve yourself. So when you do have a woman that you fall in love with, that you want to allow to align herself with you. That also it'll be important for you to maintain her happiness, or to maintain these moments of joy or sexual pleasure or whatever the case is, and to have an understanding of how her body works, how her hormones work, how a woman's mind perceives the world differently because of her biology or whatever. So maybe the husband is not intimate with her. I don't know. Just be careful. There's this thing called white knighting, and we don't want to be white knighting just because we feel sympathy for a girl. You know, she's a pretty woman. You know, it's easy. I'm sure for a lot of guys to just want to sympathize with her, or maybe even use sympathizing with her as a way of conversating. You know, it's kind of like this weird stuff that people
Yeah.
do. It's not right. You know, be an individual. Be an individual. Use what you have to exert just goodness into the world, like to insert some rationality or some logic or something that's not necessarily divisive, just because you want to sympathize with, Homestead.
Homestead Hippie.
Yeah, Homestead Hippie.
All right, so talking about seeing through the mascara, the next point gets into this. All right, 4.
Now he's talking directly to Homestead Hippie.
Right, directly to Homestead Hippie.
You hear that, Homestead Hippie? He's talking to you.
Okay, so this next point, point 3, is also an example of seeing through the mascara. You say you are concerned about being righteous with him and doing things to make the two of you closer. Does he know that you are discussing your sexual past on YouTube? Is that making your relationship with him better? Is that making the people in his church respect him more? Why do you feel the need to stop the video because he was there? Does he even know you're putting out these videos talking about he does not please you sexually? So here you have her saying she wants to be righteous with him because she wants to do things that will strengthen their relationship together. And here you have her presenting a YouTube video talking about how he doesn't measure up to her past lovers.
Yeah.
So that is an example of seeing through the mascara. That means that she's saying one thing, but it's contradicting something else, and it doesn't add up. It's inconsistent.
Right.
And if you can't see the reality of things, then you'll just see a beautiful woman and naturally want to sympathize with her without even thinking, without even seeing the reality of things.
Yeah, but I want to say be careful, because she is describing her feelings. And that's one thing that you have to have this discernment. What she says she feels, she feels. She's not saying it because she doesn't feel it. So, what does she feel? She feels sexual dissatisfaction. She feels unloved. It doesn't mean that tomorrow or right after she finished this video and maybe her husband did something for her and made her feel loved and special. But definitely when a woman's telling you what she feels that. She feels it. So there has to be some discernment. But at the same time, you have to also be thinking to yourself, what is all the elements within the story? Are they adding up together, regardless of whether they match up with what she feels? Because what she feels and what's happening aren't necessarily exactly the same thing, right? And because you're only getting half of a story.
Right.
So it's impossible to really know what the truth is when you got half of a story. But one thing is real, and her feelings are real. What she feels is real. She doesn't feel love. She feels sexual dissatisfaction. She feels that her past lovers had something more with her because of how passionate their lovemaking was.
This is the next point in the video. You've had alpha bad boy men, and now you're grieving that you don't have them anymore. There's a term for this. It's called the alpha widow. If you are sincere about embracing a new sexuality with a different type of man, then you should let him lead you in the bedroom. It's time for you to pursue your husband with the same passion that you pursued these other alpha male bad boy types. This is the only way you will get over those past alphas. So she does talk in the video about how she started smoking and started drinking and started cussing to show this guy that they weren't all that much different.
Right.
And then she goes into how she would go after these types because she wanted to get something back and fix something that she lost the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So the perspective, again, this goes back to the perspective that she's having that we talked about earlier. She's dissatisfied. She's depressed. She feels unloved. Well, she needs to start chasing after her husband with the same passion that she was pursuing those other types.
Yeah, if you value your marriage, you're going to try to make decisions to improve your marriage. You know, it's impossible for, you know, for another person to make you happy. Like, that's an impossibility. Only only happiness and contentment can come from yourself. And you have to make choices.
And she gave us specific examples of what she did to pursue these other lovers.
Right.
So
she immersed herself in the
and she did, but she hasn't told us this is what I've done to actively pursue my husband.
At least not in this video.
She hasn't here.
Yeah, not in this video.
And this is a big problem. Her husband is not, she's not even pursuing her husband. It seems like she's not pursuing her husband as much as she's pursued all these other men in the past.
Right.
And she won't if she's,
I wonder what her husband looks like.
She's coming from a perspective of comparing him to her past lovers and him pursuing her, then it's not going to be practical for her to get over the past. Yeah. She's going to have to move. She's going to have to change her perspective to pursuing him at the very least, as much as she pursued her past lovers.
Yeah, I wonder what he looks like.
And she's going to have to stop comparing them.
Yeah.
And she's going to have to start asking, what is it that I have to do to make sure that he is satisfied? That's how she's gonna if she's gonna have success with getting over her past, she's gonna have to change that perspective.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if she wants to be a high value wife for her husband, right? And that's something that every woman has to make her own decisions. If a woman wants to decide that that's what she wants to do with her life, A, she wants to be married. B, she wants to have children. And C, she wants to have a mutually beneficial relationship with her partner. Then she should invest in becoming a valuable partner. Right? And there's a lot of different ways to do that. And one would be to be proactive in decisions that will benefit mutually the relationship for her and for her husband. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of information on the husband, but we have a lot of information on her, and it seems like she doesn't have answers, and she's asking for men or possibly other women to provide her those answers.
Right. I think so.
And I would say my guess is that would hurt her husband's feelings a lot. And what she's doing here with this video, especially if she's hiding these videos, would very much hurt the relationship because, you know, if this guy is a Christian guy, probably sexuality is not something he's comfortable with, and airing out the most intimate details or this sort of very intimate subject matter to just the public in general, I mean, I feel that's super inconsiderate of her. I'm sorry, Homestead. I'm sorry, but the
No,
truth is
it's
the
true.
truth. The
It's
truth is the
true.
truth.
It is
It's
true.
very inconsiderate to just kind of put this stuff out there.
5 ties into 4, and it's find out what pleases your husband sexually and do your best to make him happy. Don't compare him to past bad boys. Out with the old, in with the new. Now we talked some
But
about
wait,
these.
wait.
We talked about some of these issues already.
All right, so the reason why this is important is that if you pursue your husband like that, it might give him, one, the confidence, or two, feelings of permission. If he has some sort of morality or religious reasons maybe stopping him, maybe he's not exactly sure what you feel, maybe he's not exactly sure what you like. So if you pursue your husband in this sort of manner, maybe it will open him up and free him.
And something else about this is when she's talking about spirituality, she's talking about religion in a restrictive way.
Yeah, instead of being freed.
She's talking about it as a restriction, and there is no freedom that
Yeah,
she talks about.
that's sad.
There is no way that she presents as a way that she likes to please her husband or he likes to please her. Only talking about religion and a way that's controlling or restricting the satisfaction that they have in their relationship.
Yeah.
And it's not
Doesn't sound healthy.
it's not healthy, and it's not. She is going to have to she's going to have to let him lead her. And if she's accepting a new life, embracing a new life, a new type of sexuality, then it's not one that she's going to be able to define the same way that she's defined all her past sexuality.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to lead her in that.
Maybe he can't, man.
Maybe he can't, but
This is why-
she
this
needs to pursue him, though.
Yes.
That at least to the level that she's pursued her past lovers.
Right.
She doesn't need to be comparing him. And she's got to take the old out of her mind and fill that with the new.
She's mourning the loss of sexuality.
Right.
All right. And sadly, it's she's defining that in religious terms.
Right.
So there's a lot of hurdles here. One, she sees her spirituality as confining a moralistic jail.
If you don't plan to fully embrace your new life, you will end up hurting yourself and also a good man even more.
And your child.
And your child. So,
and don't wait like 10 years to figure this out.
right.
That'd be the worst thing. Figure it
It's-
out. Or sacrifice. It's like, are you going to sacrifice because you have a child? Your child's going to love the dad no matter what. So you either you're going to sacrifice, or you're going to do what you want, but figure that out fast and do it.
Right.
Yeah. I say, you know what? You should sacrifice. You got a child involved. It's not fair to them. If you're not cheating on him and he's not cheating on you, there's healthy ways to resolve this problem.
All right, so that wraps up the first part of the video, and now we're moving into the part addressing our demographic. All right, so now we're talking to our audience, the guys. You can clearly see that women in their sexual prime prioritize the alphas over the betas. Then when they are not in their prime, they have to settle for what they can get. It's a hard, cruel world out there, and you have to decide who you will be based on many things. Women's sexual desire is only one factor you should consider.
All right, so we need to translate that.
Okay, so first of all, you can see by her actions that when she was in her sexual prime, she goes for a different type of man than later in life.
Right. So what type of man is that?
the alpha type dominant
Right. So
male
if
personality
you
is what she's attracted to, and it's what she can get when she's 18, 20, 21.
right, she's able to get. So this is an important distinction here. In The Rational Male by Rollo Tomassi, it describes two types of males, the alpha male and the beta male. The alpha male having the more aggressive sexual characteristics, the dominant characteristics, the unapologetic, self knowing characteristics, versus the socially appeasing male, provisional male. You have the male that is concerned with what is good for him, or why he's doing it, why he wants to do it for himself, or whatever reasons for himself to do it. And the other male that is giving away his sovereignty to other people or to society, and sacrificing himself completely for that.
It was possible for her to attract a certain type of men
Right, these alpha
when
guys.
she was in her prime,
These are the
and
athletes.
these are her first choice.
Right.
And now that she's out of her prime, 10 years later, 7 years later,
Probably like 10 years later.
she's not exactly able to attract the same type of guys as well as she could before.
Right.
And she realizes that. So this is her second choice. So guys have to see that there's a difference, that the more desirable personality is the alpha dominant male type of personality, and the less attractive is the beta male personality. And even when she does settle for a beta male, she's stuck wishing that he was an alpha male.
Right.
Or she's caught in this dilemma of either one, wishing that her current husband is that alpha dominant type, or wishing she was back with one of her other past lovers. So this is a big point for guys to come away to realize that it doesn't matter how great she says her husband is, or how righteous she says he is, or how much she tries to build him up like that. But the reality is that when she could attract any man she wanted to, she chose the alpha dominant types. Mm-hmm. So that should tell you who's more attractive. What type is more attractive? And don't count on... Okay, so the point is you have to decide who you're going to be, and it needs to be a decision that you make, and this fact that women's attraction factor into it is a part. It's not all of it. It's not all of what you're making your choice based on. It's a factor in what you're making your choice.
Yeah, so this is why I said it's very important for our tacticians out there to realize what they're looking for, what the qualities that are important to them. And of course, sex is going to be an important quality. But what Jonathan is saying is that you don't want to have a woman who is choosing you without any real passion for you. Because obviously she did have passion, but it's not for her current husband. That passion is still with these other men of the past. And you don't want to have that for yourself. You want, when you're married to your wife, you want a woman that is going to do whatever she can to get you back, and to love you and pursue you, and to be passionate for you. If what she did was she started cussing and smoking and doing weed or whatever she said she was doing, I mean, that's a big change for her. That's a huge lifestyle change
That's
for
a
her.
whole life.
But here's the important part. She did that because she wanted to do that. And what you want is you want a woman who wants to do that for you.
It wants to pursue you.
Don't try to make any woman anything, right? You don't want that for yourself. You don't want to change someone to mold to you. You don't want that. Just like you don't want someone to come and try to make you happy, because that's impossible. You're responsible for your own happiness, your own contentment. And You want to find a woman who is pursuing you passionately, who wants to have her best sexual years with you because she's into you, she likes you, right? And hopefully you are feel the same way for her. You want to passionately love her and have a very strong romantic love life with her. And you don't want to be settled for. That's the worst possible thing that could
You
happen.
don't want to be second, third, fourth, fifth choice.
Right.
You want to be first choice, and you want her to pursue you.
And you don't want to settle for a woman. You don't want to settle. You don't settle.
No, you don't settle. You choose, you select a high quality, high value woman.
Right. And it is possible that if Jonathan is right and the husband did know her past, he would be extremely unhappy with her past. He should have looked for another woman.
Well, no, that was one of the points I was making, was that maybe he wasn't unhappy with her past. Maybe that was proof that he wanted to be sexual with her in that way.
Yeah, of
That
course.
was one of my points, was that if he knew her sexual past and he decided to marry her anyway, maybe he thought, well, they'd have a great sex life together. What he just said about choosing and selecting a high quality woman for yourself also ties into the next point we're about to cover. And this is a general point. It's not always what should happen, it's a general rule.
Okay.
Okay. Don't get in a serious monogamous relationship until you are in your sexual prime, typically late 30s, if you get in a monogamous relationship at all. So the reason for this is we're talking about her. She's in her 20s, she's 18, she's 21, and she's in her sexual prime. And she is able to attract a different quality of men at that time than she is 10 years later. All right, so the same thing for men. Men, when they are 18, are typically not able to attract the same quality of woman that they are able to attract when they are in their sexual prime, which is their late 30s. And this is based on the chart in Rollo Tomassi's book, The Rational Male. It has a general chart, sexual market value chart, that it graphs women going up and corresponding to their age and then going down, and men going up and corresponding to their age and going down. So that is a generality. It's not that there are no rare cases that should get in a monogamous relationship before their sexual prime, but if they wait until their sexual prime, then their chances of selecting a higher quality woman are going to be higher.
But that depends on some things, right? So this is what it depends on. One, have you spent your 20s becoming the man that you want to be?
Right, it does depend on.
Do you have a vision of the man you want to be physically? Do you have a vision of the man you want to be intellectually? Do you have a vision of the man you want to be financially? Do you have a vision of the man you want to be career-wise? Do you have a vision of the man who is active and lives an active lifestyle and what that means for you? Do you have a vision of the type of family that you want to have? Do you have a vision of the type of woman that you want to have, right? And you spend between 18 and 28 starting to get there. And then when you get there about 30, that's when you start really living out that life. And when you do that, that is when a man is able to be in what Jonathan is describing from Rollo Tomassi's sexual market value chart as in the prime of your sexual market value. Because that's where a man is at this weird sort of apex of this meeting point where his career, his age, his financial stability, his intellectual his intellectual self has been realized. All these different parts of his life have been realized, and that creates a scenario where it's really weird, but the balances have been shifted where that man that we just described is able to select from a large group of women that would find him attractive for a lot of different qualities. And the more, of course, the more physically attractive the man is, then of course the wider variety of good quality, valuable women for him to choose from will be. So, you know, if you want the most beautiful lawyer, or you want the most beautiful doctor, or whatever kind of woman you envision for yourself, maybe it's not a woman like that, maybe it's some swimsuit model. You know, the 30-year-old you at the top of your career, that's who's already able to provision and support a family, if that's what you want or not want, it doesn't matter what you want. But if you just have the ability to do it, it gives you this selection of women, where when women are young and in their 20s and they don't need to have any ability to provision, or they don't need anything other than their beauty in itself to select high quality men from, then the balances have turned there, because women don't necessarily look for just, it's not just the attractiveness of a man alone physically isn't the primary thing that attracts women. There's other things like your charisma and your status and all these other factors that a woman evaluates. And every woman is different, and every woman, depending on who you are and what your personality is, will be attracted to you. And there's probably a greater chance of that when you are at the top of your game. Everyone's different though, so you never know. I mean, you can take a gamble, or you can start working hard now and living the kind of life you want to lead and being a decision maker in your own life. And that's what we recommend that you do here at Talk Tactic.
The last point on this is, if you want to understand more about the dualistic sexual strategies of women and the solipsism and the SMV chart and the things that she's bringing up unintentionally in her video, and many, many more concepts, then you guys need to check out the book The Rational Male by Rollo Tomassi. It can change your life.
Yeah, I want to take some. I want to give some examples of that. So let's just go over it briefly. So the dualistic sexual strategy of women. Homestead Hippie gives us examples of that when she's talking about how now she's with this very good, nice guy that she loves. He's a great guy, righteous guy, but she's pining for her old alpha lovers, bad boy lovers, right? And that's an example of the dualistic sexual strategy of women, because on the one hand they want to have a provisioner, but at the same time they want the very outgoing, the kind of man that feminists rail against, the masculine kind of man. That's actually the kind of alpha characteristics male that women kind of go for, and that's a fact. So, you know, in this book called The Female Brain by Luann Brizendine, she talks about how during a woman's menstrual cycle that the different hormonal levels at the peak of her fertility are actually going to give the woman certain levels of oxytocin, and that even if she does have a lover, or even if she does have a husband, she will be at her greatest risk, or will have the greatest motivation to pick this other man because of just what's going on biologically in her body. That's not an excuse, but it's just kind of this biological reality. And on the other hand, there's other things that happen in the female body that would give her a selection for the alpha type lover who isn't going to care if she's married or not. He's not a nice guy, you know, is willing to be sexual with her in the moment. And at the same time, you know, when that part of her hormone cycle changes, she's going to be the kind of woman that is going to ensure that she has her provisioner there if that alpha person, that alpha type male doesn't want to be that for her, right? But I
Right.
think the reason for that dualistic strategy is if the woman can't get the alpha male, at least as described by Rollo Tomassi, if the woman can't get that alpha male to be her sole provisioner, then what she'll do is she'll secure a beta provisioner and sexually still try to attract these alpha males. Okay.
Right.
Solipsism. You want to explain solipsism? How this is?
Okay, solipsism is the idea that she is the center of the universe. Things revolve around her. And the specific example of that in this video is she's talking about all of her past indiscretions, and then she's saying, my husband is depressing me because he's not desiring me, lusting after me, making me feel loved, instead of looking at the perspective of, well, maybe I should try and please my husband sexually, and maybe I should pursue my husband as much as I pursued these other alpha lovers in the past. It's self-centered type of perspective that she has.
That's a great explanation of solipsism, especially the type of solipsism that is explained by Rollo Tomassi in his book, The Rational Male.
All right, there's another term in the rational male, and that is the alpha widow. And it's the woman who had a previous alpha male as a lover,
Or alphas, plural.
or alphas, and for whatever reason, she's lost them. And now she is pining or grieving for the loss of her past alpha lovers.
Yeah, and obviously this is the case for Homestead Hippie.
Right. Alpha widow. Yeah. And then the SMV sexual market value chart that Rollo Tomassi presents in his book is also, this video is also a presentation of that, because we're presented with who she could attract when she was in her prime versus who she can attract now. And the other part that we're presenting to our viewers is, if the man waits until he's in his sexual prime, then there's going to be a different quality of women that he is capable of securing.
Right, and he doesn't have to. So, and Homestead Hippie, I mean, she is a beautiful woman and all that. If you're at your peak as a male, then you don't have to settle for a woman who is an alpha widow.
She's talking in her video about her first passionate lover. Mm-hmm. If a guy waits until his prime to select, he can be that person. Right. Instead of being the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth place.
Right. And that's what you should want for yourself. Just like a woman should want for herself to feel like this guy, he loves me so much. I'm his world, right? Well, come on, guys. Like, that's what you want for yourself, right? You want a woman who you're that for her.
Some of the terms that Rollo Tomassi talks about in The Rational Male are the dualistic sexual strategies, solipsism, the alpha widow, and the SMV chart. And if you are reading The Rational Male, you will see so many examples of these different concepts, plus you will learn so many different things in addition to that about intergender relationships and dynamics, and we highly recommend that you read that book.
Right, and also recommend you reading the book by Luann Brizendine, The Female Brain, and she also has one called The Male Brain, and they're really good, and they'll actually provide further evidence that actually supports Rollo Tomassi's book, The Rational Male. And what I like about The Rational Male is it gives a sort of like a framework for the motivations that might not be completely understood by women, and some guidelines for men to have some choices to make. And that's what's cool about Luann's book, is because it's all about biology and science in a way that Rollo's book isn't. But I think together there's a good synergy between the two books. So check them out. So we just want to thank you guys for joining us with this first video response by Talk Tactic to Homestead Hippie. I hope that you guys were able to gain some insights. It was very insightful for me personally, and I just wish Homestead Hippie the best of luck, and hopefully things between her and her husband in this area of their life improve for the best. And if not, hopefully any decisions that are made between them end up being the most beneficial for all parties involved.
All right, catch you guys later. And also, it talks about the prime, the sexual prime for men and women. That's the sexual market value chart. So a few of the terms that Rollo Tomassi talks about: the alpha widow, solipsism, the dualistic sexual strategies of women. Oh man, this is mad.
That first one was good.
A few of the terms that Rollo Tomassi talks about are the dualistic sexual strategies of women. Why is that a dualistic sexual strategy?
You said it fine.
Dualistic sexual strategy. A dualistic.
Just like a Sean Connor.
A Tom Likish. A Sean Connery.
Sean Connery, yeah.
Yeah.